very good morning now to, of course, our Dubbo Region man Matthew Dickerson, who can see me holding my face because I have a little bit of a bout of Bell's palsy still this week.
Yeah, well, I didn't notice. I was listening to you on the radio
Until
this
now.
morning and I didn't notice it at all listening to you. So from a voice or an audio perspective, it obviously makes no difference.
That's probably a good thing,
That's
except
right.
if I hold it off, you can hear I'm not really talking. Can you hear it now a little bit, or is it just in my ears maybe?
It's probably just in your ears, and you
Yeah,
might be
maybe
you
just-
might be very conscious of it.
I
But
am very
again,
conscious.
I was listening to you on the radio on the way down to the
Yeah, yeah.
studio this morning, and I didn't think, gee, Brett sounds funny this morning. I thought, gee, Brett's giving good news on the weather this morning. Was my main thought.
That's because you didn't do the weather today.
I didn't do the weather
You've done
today.
that, what, a few weeks in a row now.
I
haven't you?
have, yeah. I've got the career after being mayor is to be a weather person on Zoo FM.
Zoo FM's weather boy.
That's
what
right.
we'll call you. A few things happening. The Wheelers Lane upgrade is continuing. How's that going?
Yeah, so I think we've mentioned that $1.774 million we're spending on that. That's between the railway line and Birch Avenue. And it's been an area that has needed some work for a period of time. And it gives you an indication of just how much work needs to be done in areas. When you see an area on the road and you think, gee, that looks like it needs a bit of work done there. And I had some people say to me, look, Matt, just can we get a working bee together? Get a couple of whacker packers on the weekend and just smooth out those few little lumps there. Well, it's a bit more than a whacker packer on a weekend. $1.774 million is a lot of money to spend on that. But that gives you an idea of the sort of money you have to spend when it comes to roads. Roads are incredibly expensive. And when you do them right, which obviously is what our intention is to do them right, then you are digging down significantly to get down to lower layers, to get them right, to get the top seal right. And I often think about it as a painter, if you're painting a house, for example, you don't just put the top coat on, whatever's there on the walls of your house. If you're repainting your house, then that'll still look terrible. You've got to get down, get it right at the lower levels, and the little bit of paint that you put on top is only good if the lower levels are good.
It'll be harder to come back and fix later on, wouldn't it, if you don't get it right in the lower levels?
Well, that's part of the problem, but you'll also see that very quickly that bitumen is really a seal, and that gives you an indication there. It's a seal on top of what's there. So you need to get those lower levels right, get the construction, the materials there right, get the various components of that right, get it flattened out, get it basically settled in, and then that bitumen that goes on top is really a seal to keep the water from washing, the rain, etc., from washing the rest of that away. So that's part of the problem. And that's part of the problem as well when we had so much rain at the end of last year that water was coming from underneath, not from always above. Sometimes it was from above because there was so much of it there. But that's got to be right so that when you get traffic, and that section of Wheelers Lane gets a significant amount of traffic, then you've got to get it right for all those vehicles and trucks, etc., that go along there.
So this is stage one. You've still got stage two works expected to be taken in the 23-24 financial year. So this is part and parcel of a full restoration, I guess.
Correct, and we'll see interruptions there, so my apologies in advance for people. We'll see interruptions from last week when it started through to September. Now they'll change and there'll be some detours in place and there'll be one lane sometimes open, and so there'll be a variety of things there. But if you ever travel down that section, or you do travel there regularly, just keep in mind, maybe leave a few minutes extra for yourself, because you might have to go up and around with a detour sometimes, or it might be down to a single lane sometimes. But the problem is, Brett, of course, everyone wants perfect roads, but no one wants interruptions. So unfortunately, you have to have interruptions to get those roads fixed up.
Yeah, it makes it a bit hard. I know Talbridale Street's getting a bit bumpy at the minute as well, a few holes in there. Is that sort of going to be upgraded as well as different roads across the region?
I haven't got all the roadworks in front of me at the moment, but we're spending in the vicinity of 35 million, maybe a bit more than that, in the roads budget for next financial year, so the 23-24 financial year. So there are roadworks being done across our whole LGA. Keeping in mind, we've got approximately 2,875 kilometres of roads in the Dubbo Regional Council LGA.
So still prioritising what's the most important to the least important.
And there's two factors to that prioritisation. One factor is how often it's used, so how busy a road it is, and the second factor is the condition of that. It's not a factor of, can I get the mayor to come along and drive on my road and then you'll get that fixed up. And I was at a meeting recently where some community members were talking. I was outside our LGA, and one of the community members said, well, that's exactly what happened. Their mayor drove down a road, realised how bad it was, and got it fixed up. And I said, well, that's not really a good strategic process to go through. We've got a very strategic process. if all it took was me driving along the road and then clicking my fingers and getting that road fixed up, I'd have 1,000 people ringing me saying, come and drive on my road, come and drive on my road. And that's not a good way to go about strategy. And it's not a good way to spend $35 million.
No, for sure. And that's a full smile, by the way, not a half smile.
Good, thank you.
Hey, quick update, Heritage Plaza Works, how are they going down there for the old Dubbo Jail? There was some archaeological works, I had to hold my face to say that word, going on. Is that finished now?
No, it's still very slow, Brett. That is a little bit frustrating and not disappointing yet, but it's a certainly frustrating, slow process. You're aware and the community is vaguely aware of what our plan is there to open all that up, to give another area for people in the CBD to go and sit and visit and to see some artworks on the wall there and open up the entrance to the old Dubbo Jail. If you remember, before that building in front was knocked down, it was often hard for people to even find the entrance to the old Dubbo Jail. This is the whole idea to open it up. Unfortunately, when the work was being done and they were excavating that old building site and they were clearing out the car park, the contractors went just a little bit too deep and uncovered something that may be a wall of an old jail. It may be part of an old courthouse. We're talking about maybe back as far as 1863 here. So unfortunately, once that was uncovered, if it hadn't been uncovered, we could have continued on. Once it was uncovered, then we had to stop everything, get Heritage New South Wales involved, and then they've told us some steps we've got to do. So exactly as you said, an archaeological assessment. That's being done as we speak. We've got a local contractor doing that work. Then that information will go back to Heritage New South Wales. They'll make a decision what we need to do. Now, it could be you've got to uncover that all and then put perspex over it so everyone can see it. Or it could be, now we know it's there, you can cover it up again, but you've got to put some interpretive signage to say, underneath the ground here, this is what exists. I don't really know what other options there might be, lots of options, but we've got to wait for Heritage New South Wales.
So potentially that could have been a good thing because that might be something from our history that's really important for us though.
Correct. So it's a bit frustrating because it's now delaying the project significantly. Extra work's going to be done, extra costs involved with that, but at the same time, exactly as you said, that might be fantastic. It might show us more information about what was around there, but look at some fascinating history around there, even the jail, even the fact that there are 8 people that were condemned to death in that particular jail. Even the new exhibition we've got there that shows all the people that were on death row, and again, only 8 of those ended up, being hung from the gallows. I was trying to think of a nice way to say it, but there's not really a nice way to say it. Was they were hung in the gallows there. But looking along there, and I remember taking my kids through that new exhibition there, and they were looking at some of the things that people were on death row for, and they didn't seem like they were that bad a thing, some of these people on there. So again, it's a really fascinating bit of our history.
Perhaps all of our families need to take their children in there so they can see that, what people used to get hanged for.
That's right, maybe. So when you don't make up your bed, when you don't clean your room.
And I say that nicely, of course. Visitors to Dubbo, they're staying longer.
They are staying longer, and this is one of the things that I've often talked about for many years, Brett, for probably all my time on council. I've said that it's great. We get people to Dubbo for the zoo. Over 300,000 people a year come for the primary attraction of our zoo. That is fantastic. Now, we've got lots of other exhibitions. We've got retail shopping. We've got beautiful outside landscapes to go and look at. So all these different things. But ultimately, if we can keep people here for 1 extra night, 2 extra nights, that's fantastic. And the latest data there shows that we used to get around about 2.2 nights per person when they came to stay. We've pushed that up to 2.7. Now that injects, I haven't done the calculations, but that injects a significant amount of dollars into our economy, half a day extra. You've already got them here. It's a bit like a business. A business will often talk about, if you can keep selling to your existing clients, that's easier. Sell more to your existing clients, that's easier than trying to get new clients. So if we've got people here in Dubbo already, we've already attracted them here. If we can just keep them here a bit longer. And I think part of that is a result of additional attractions. We've got the Royal Flying Doctor Service Visitor Experience Centre. That is a fantastic exhibition. Obviously the old Dubbo Jail we've just been talking about. The zoo, as I said, is a primary attraction. We've also got things like the Wellington Caves down in Wellington, and the region probably keeps them there a bit. For example, they might come to Dubbo. Parkes Observatory, the radio telescope, is only about an hour away. So they might duck over to Parkes, spend a bit of time there, and then come back to Dubbo, for example. They might go to other exhibitions around the region. So I think overall, our team and the community in general have been doing a really good job to make sure we keep those people a bit longer.
You'd have to be pleased post-COVID that the uptake is still there.
One of the things that's a really interesting challenge, Brett, is that if you look at when international borders were closed effectively during COVID, we as a tourism facility in regional Australia benefited that. Now, I don't want to say that COVID was fantastic because people died. So I take into account that COVID was not great for lots of people around the world. But from a regional tourism perspective, people that were living in Sydney, for example, that would have normally gone overseas, said, well, we want to go somewhere and we can travel within the state, so we might go and explore some of these regional areas. So it actually did boost regional tourism. Fantastic. Now that borders are open again, that's the real challenge for us. How do we hold on to some of those people and keep them coming out to regional areas? And I think we're doing that okay at the moment.
All right. The local paper is reporting that you're going to meet with Energy Minister Penny Sharp as soon as possible over potential delays to the Central West Arana Renewable Energy Zone. What's happening there?
So on Friday, we've got a coalition of regional energy mayors. I like to call it a coalition of regional energetic mayors, but the other mayors don't agree with me. No, some of them aren't so energetic. But that's a group of about 14 councils that are in that group that are in areas that have got renewable energy zones. So in our example here, Dubbo Regional Council, we're in the Central West Arana Renewable Energy Zone. That includes Midwestern Regional Council, call it Mudgee, includes Warrumbungle Shire Council, call it Coonabarabran, and it actually just does touch a little bit on Gilgandra. Now, we're the most advanced renewable energy zone. We won't necessarily be the biggest. Our area here is about a 3 gigawatt one. Up in New England, for example, that's meant to be 8 gigawatts, but these are changing depending on how successful they are. So Dubbo's might grow a bit, New England's might shrink a little bit. But one of the things that's important is that we, as a group, want to maximise the benefits for our community. Now, there are still some of those councils that still say, let's stop it, we don't want these wind turbines, we don't want these solar farms. And I've talked to the group on several occasions saying, I think trying to stop renewable energy coming along is like standing at the edge of the ocean and putting your hand up and saying, I don't want waves to come crashing in at the beach today, and you'll get knocked over by the waves. I think you've got to say, they're coming, the waves are coming, let's get on a surfboard and ride them in. And with renewable energy zones, let's make sure we get on top and talk to the government and be positive about it. What can we get for our communities? One of the projects that I've pitched for them, for example, is a thing I called a REAC, a Renewables Education and Activity Centre, REAC. And I'd love to see something like this built down around the Badengra area. And I think of the Parks Observatory I mentioned a moment ago, 100,000 visitors a year go through that. That was opened on the 14th of February 1969. The Parks Observatory was only opened on the 31st of October 1961, so 8 years later it was open. Even the Snowy Hydro Discovery Centre in Cooma gets 100,000 visitors a year. And again, that was built only a few years after the hydro scheme started in 1949.
So what are the fears of the other cohort of mayors? Is it that it's going to come and impact the land or the view of the land or something like that, or other farmers' lands or our land?
One of the interesting views, and we discussed this on Friday, was that they didn't want all these people coming into their towns and destroying their tourism. And I said, hold on a second, in regional areas, we're screaming out for more people to come into our community, so don't we want them? One of the other mayors there said that they've been involved from a mining perspective in recent years, and they've been arguing in recent years that they want no mining camps around their communities. They want all these people that are working in the mines to come and have to stay in their community. The Department of Planning actually made that one of the consent conditions for some of the mines. Now some of these councils are arguing the other way around, that we don't want these people living in our communities, and I say we do. Now it's going to be a challenge, and that's part of the thing, Brett. Do you see it as a problem, so you say no, or do you see it as an opportunity and a challenge to be addressed? And that's the way I'm addressing it. And some of these councils are on board with that, some aren't. Now on Friday, we had 3 of the staff from Penny Sharp's office, who's the relevant minister. Unfortunately, Penny, being a very new government, Penny was actually double booked on that day. Now that sounds a bit clumsy, but I excuse the government for that, because I've been to some meetings with some ministers already, and you walk into their offices, they don't have computers set up yet. They don't have phone systems set up. So it's all very new with the new government in. So unfortunately, Penny was double booked. Otherwise, we would have met with her on Friday. But we've got some meetings, some potential meetings coming up with Penny Sharp. And I'm not really at the stage where this is the worst possible thing that can happen, a delay in the project. We know it's happening. We've got lots of planning, and maybe, you look at the positive, Brett, maybe instead of it being energised, this whole renewable energy zone energised by 2025, it might now be energised by 2027 or maybe 2028. Well, that just gives us more time to get the planning, to maximise the benefits for it. But we're already seeing benefits. We're seeing benefits from the projects that are happening around Badengra, which technically aren't part of the renewable energy zone, because the renewable energy zone projects, if you want to be very pedantic about it, have to connect to the new infrastructure, which is the new power lines that are being built. EnergyCo is building new power lines. To us, we've got a 500 kilovolt and a 330 kilovolt power line that are being built to connect these new projects. The existing projects down there, the Badengra Wind Farm, for example, Iberdrola owns that one, the Lightsource BP solar farm, a 200 megawatt solar farm, those are connecting to the existing infrastructure, but they're still giving benefits to the communities, both in construction and ongoing benefits. There's a 400 megawatt Lightsource BP solar farm being built beside the 200 megawatt one right now, and that particular project again has lots of people working on it, living in Wellington, buying food from the cafes and the restaurants, etc. So these are all giving short-term benefits, but my main objective, Brett, is to get long-term benefits, really specifically for Wellington. Dubbo will get some offshoots of that as well, but it's around the Wellington area. Let's get some benefits for Wellington out of this.
And I think, our country is, I guess, bordered by water. We can see some of these wind turbines now popping up in our oceans, because where the wind currents are, we should maybe take advantage of that more around the coastal areas, I guess. But that's really interesting that you want to push us forward and move with that. You'll keep us up to date with the outcome?
Absolutely, there'll be lots of exciting things happening. And REACT, just keep mentioning everyone you have on radio that's related to renewable energy, just keep saying REACT, REACT, REACT. I want to see this thing built.
And I think you're being a little bit too fair on that new government for double booking, but that's okay. You're allowed to, because you're the mayor of the city. I'm not. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett.
I appreciate your time. Yeah, just on 8:30 here at Zoo.